G'day YouTube, welcome back to the channel. It's Turbo Tristan here, and boy oh boy have lots of things been going on in the garage. So firstly, what you'll notice is there's an absolute mess everywhere. I've got the turbo and the manifold all pulled apart. I'm gonna just put everything back ready to go back on the engine and all the fittings. I may even shorten these water hoses or do something with that. I'm not quite sure yet, but the engine is in. Now I'm sure that's very disappointing to a lot of you to see it like this and not be brought along with the experience of putting it in. Again, this is something I did with the help of my missus, and honestly I could not have done it without her, so big shout out to SJ for helping me put the engine in. That's right, I've got a girlfriend that helps me fit engines to cars, so I'm pretty lucky. So credit where credit's due, she helped me out a lot. Now we did this without the use of an engine crane, and the way we did that is the engine was on the stand, we slid it out, lowered it down to the ground. I'm using the sump which is off the old engine, which is over there. I haven't pulled that completely down yet, but I will. But for now it's just sitting in that bucket so it doesn't drip oil everywhere. From here we sat the engine on the ground. From there I was able to mount the transmission on the ground right here. You can see the drag marks. We slid the engine on the dirty old scummy sump, which I didn't matter if that got scratched or dented. Dragged it over. We used the tow hooks down there, jacked the car up, slid the engine underneath, and because there's no hubs or anything on the car, I was able to then lower the car down over the motor, obviously removing the jack stands, all the way down, enough for me to get a couple of threads on these engine mounts here. So then I rattled those up, lifted the engine up, and then lifted up the other side and put in a couple of these threads here, zipped that up, and then from there was just simple as jacking the whole car up again from the same point. It didn't leave the jack, and this is a low rider jack, so it goes almost all the way down to the ground. And there we go, the engine is in, and yes, it is a nightmare of colours. Some Joe Rogan DMT Special Dream engine bay. But I really wanted to go back to that 90s, 80s theme, which just reminds me of hanging out with my cousins and having a good time. Everything was neon, everything was bright. I've done the same with the hood, or the bonnet, as we call it here in Australia. It looked awesome. There was lots of pink and everything through there. I managed to find a can of fluoro orange. I made some weird stupid effect with just leftover paint. And then I decided to spray on there "Spool Up," which is my slogan, in blue to match the blue of the engine. That didn't go so well. So I've got some black craft paint and I'm just going to go around there and just put a border around the writing so you can actually make out what it says from a distance. I think that'll look really good. But yeah, in the engine bay, we've replaced all of the hose with silicone hoses, so no more leaks. I'm about to put a thermostat in there. Yes, I'm going to put a thermostat back in. I've got a brand new standard one, and I'm going to drill a couple of small holes in it around just to help the flow. But as was pointed out to me by a very knowledgeable man from Trick Fab, Darren, he pointed out that it probably overheated because I didn't have a thermostat. And now that he mentions it, it actually makes sense. Spinning at 7,000 RPM for long periods of time, the water doesn't get a chance to slow down and go through the radiator and actually cool. So that is another reason why it may have overheated. Again, I don't really know. I did find a split in one of the heater hoses right back there. Now again, I don't know if that was from pulling the engine out and me damaging it, or whether it was like that. I didn't see any evidence of it leaking from back there, so I think I did that after the fact. So I think it was just a matter of the water moving too fast to cool, too much timing in the initial street tune. That was before I learnt that Hondas don't like a lot of timing. They run pretty efficiently as they are. So when we get this engine dynoed properly, for real, it will have a lot of the timing taken out, which means we can put more boost in, which is great. So it'll still even out. You can see here I've got the new braided line for the clutch master cylinder replacement over there. Just cleans up that side of the engine bay and also tucks that down. I've gone and put a fitting on the fuel line, which is -6, and I'm going to run an inline fuel filter from there. So I've got to work out where I'm going to put that. So I might make a bracket that mounts off here and then just cable tie it on or something, I don't know. Lots and lots of stuff to do today. Even though the engine is in the car, you haven't missed out on a lot. That's all just struggle and swearing and in and out. You've seen that a million times. The Hawkeye viewers will notice I've replaced all of the nuts and bolts with the zinc plated chrome looking ones all the way around. I've just got to do the 4 there on the bonnet. I've just gotten some more. Just the little things to tidy it up, neaten everything up so it looks fresh. The blue really pops against the pink, and all the yellow and green brackets look amazing. So it is a bit of a nightmare. You wouldn't want to look at this after a hangover. I think it looks cool. So what I'll do now is I'll put you on a time lapse. I'm going to fit up all the fittings on the turbo, get that in the engine bay. Then I'm going to get to work on doing the fuel lines for the fuel filter over the back. And then I've got to put the drive shafts in and then assemble the knuckles and hubs. So yeah, plenty to do. I'll chuck you on a time lapse while I get this done. But before I do, I just want to show you guys, I noticed with the old gasket that was on here, the inlet of the turbo, or the turbine, the exhaust side, was actually a lot smaller than the hole in the gasket. So what I've done is I've taken my carbide burr and I've burred that out quite a bit, but I can assure you it's a much larger and smoother opening now. So hopefully that will give us a little bit more top end, since we're going to be revving this engine a lot higher. So yeah, I thought I'd show you guys that. Just a little bit of grinding, spent the afternoon making a mess. Obviously I pulled everything apart before I did that, and then I cleaned it before I put it all back on. So we're going to get to that now. So I've got to make a bracket for my brand new fuel filter to go. I'm going to put that down here, and I fitted up the old intake plenum just to see how much space I have. I definitely have enough room. So that's going to go on there. Now I need to make a bracket, and the way I'm going to do that is just with a piece of cardboard. I've put a little bit of bearing grease on each of those nuts, just like that. And I have a very rough couple of spots where I need to drill some holes. So I'll mark that out on a piece of aluminium that I have. So there's 2 really rough spots there and there. So that's how far apart my holes will be. And I'll just transfer that distance across here. I'll drill the holes a little bit bigger so I can wiggle around in place. This is not a precise, special, magical bracket. This is just one that'll be hidden down the back. I'll stick it on the firewall there and I'll just spray paint it once it's all done, so it'll look cool. And then I'll drill a couple of other holes in here and I'll run some cable ties through there and just hold it on with that so it won't vibrate. Super duper basic. There we go, not a single ruler or measuring stick was used. These are the holes for the cable ties. So there we go. Tidy up the back. Now just quickly make sure that that fits. It should. I blasted the holes a little bit bigger. If it does, then I'll just round this off with the grinder, get it painted, stick it on. So this is my bracket that I made for my fuel filter. Painted in fluoro yellow to match the rest of the bay. Came out alright considering it was pretty bodgy. And just like that. Happy days, I'll just trim that and then that's good to go. Job done. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that short time lapse of me painting the outline on the spool up logo. Definitely looks a lot better now. I did have some hiccups with the fuel filter and the fuel lines. I grabbed one of the wrong fittings by accident, so I need to swap that over, which I'll do very soon. But it's going to come out of the factory line down the bottom like that, through the fuel filter, and then into the fuel rail through here as it was before. The only difference is this line and the new fuel filter, which is cleanable and changeable cartridges, and it's out of the way, and it tucks behind the intake plenum, so you won't even know it's there. You'll just see nice braided lines on both ends. And it was also the same deal with the oil feed line for the top of the turbo. I grabbed the wrong fitting for that one as well. That's what happens when you in there so often you're part of the furniture and you grab the things that look right and it turns out they're not because you don't know what you're doing. So I'll swap this over, ask the guys for the right one. I was down at Trick Fab today and I'm still waiting on the sump to be welded up and the fittings on the back of the intake plenum. But what I'm going to do now is fit my newly high-flowed thermostat in there. So I've just drilled out a couple of small holes just to keep the flow going through. And now we've got a restriction in the water lines so that the water going through the radiator has time to cool down. Hopefully that shall eliminate some problems. I've ordered a turbo blanket to cover the hot side of the turbo because it is fairly close to the radiator. We've got the heat wrapped exhaust. I'm probably going to get that remade because I'm not happy with how that exhaust was. It clanked on the sway bar, so it needs to be modified anyway. And I managed to spill oil all over the heat wrap, so I need to replace it anyway. So more money, more expenses, more mucking around and more time off the road, but it's coming together nicely. I'm really happy with that. Now it's time to make a bit of a mess and just take the thermostat housing off, swap that over, glue it back up with some sealant and slam it back on. So I'll probably just leave this one here. Again, content is coming hard and fast, but it's all over the place. So the high flow thermostat is in. That's all ready to go. The spool up's been outlined. It looks a million times better. Looks really, really cool. The bracket's mounted there. That'll straighten out once the fuel line is attached to that side. I've just got the catch can sitting in there now, just buttoning things up. All the plugs connected. I've topped up the power steering fluid. I'll need to do that once the engine runs. I've got to do brake and clutch fluid in there. Again, once I've sorted out what I'm doing with the brake rotors, I've ordered the 280mm mini upgraded brake rotors. So I'm just waiting to pick up the calipers from Tommy. Once I've established exactly what calipers they are, I'll order some high temp brake pads, bleed the brakes, that'll be ready. Trick Fab have said that by the end of the week I'll have my welded sump and welded inlet plenum, so I'll be able to get those two things on. Because the build is getting a lot more serious now and we should be able to turn up the power, I've got a Turbo Smart race port blow-off valve ready to go on. I'm just changing over the fittings at Trick Fab, and a boost tee. Genuine Turbo Smart gear ordered directly from them. The reason why I'm using Turbo Smart is because I've used Turbo Smart in all of my Nissans, my GTRs and my Silvias and my SSS Pulsar Turbo, so I've always used Turbo Smart. They've never let me down. This time I was going to look at doing something different and going GFB. It seems to be what everyone's doing these days. But the price was a little bit higher, so I just went with what I could afford and what I trust, which is Turbo Smart. There won't be any issues with that, but we do need a blow-off valve now because we'll be running higher boost and there'll be more stress on the Wuhan war whistle. I'm running a bleed valve just because I'm just keeping things simple, not really too worried about an electronic boost controller, even though there is a plug on my Haltech wiring that I can plug one into. But I'm not really worried about any of that stuff. I just want to keep it simple. Probably not going to go the astronomical boost levels that I thought I was going to do. So I'll probably be, at the moment it's 12 to 14. I'll bump that up to about 14 base and then maybe 20 or a little bit higher in the higher boost setting. But yeah, it's coming together. The new ball joints are in. I put a new drive shaft in on the passenger side just because the CV boot was split on the other one, and it's bloody cheap just to replace them rather than just fix the boots. So I've done that. But yeah, it's all coming together. I hope you like the new intro. I got that done through a guy that I found on Facebook. So I'm just trying out different things. It was cheap enough. I'll put a link in the description to his Facebook page. He's over in Thailand. Shoot him some money on PayPal and he'll hook you up with a sweet animated video of your car. He's done a couple for me and they're really good quality, so I'm going to keep using them. So that brings us to the end of the video. Make sure you like, share and subscribe. Spool up and we'll see ya in the next video.